in our Zoom chat room. We would like to welcome everyone. We are now starting another of our interviews, exclusive interviews that have been memorable so far. That is a partnership between the Jewish Studies Department of USP and the Jewish Academy. It's a great pleasure to have you all here. On behalf of the Jewish Studies Center, we have Dr. Suzana Chwarts, a professor at the Interdisciplinary Hebrew Bible Studies in the Federal University of São Paulo in the Jewish Studies Department. We also here, on behalf of Bogrei, we have Eduardo. Thank you very much for being here, Eduardo. On behalf of Academia Judaica, I would like to welcome our Executive Director, Dr. and Rabbi Kelly Cohen. And to help us in this series of interview, we have the wonderful pleasure of having here the presence of Dr. Luiz Fernando Pondé, professor of FAP and the director of the Lab of Politics and Media of the University of São Paulo. For this wonderful meeting today, I have the honor of introducing you all to Dr. Hanoch Ben Pazi. Dr. Suzana will give a better introduction. He is a professor of the Department of Jewish Philosophy in Bar Ilan University in Israel for Jewish French thought. He researches the philosophy and the Jewish thought in the 20th century in ethics, hermeneutics, and with the highlight for several Jewish thinkers. Dr. Suzana, on behalf of Academia Judaica and SEGI, I pass the floor on to you, and I thank you for your availability of being here, conducting this session here with us, and Dr. Felipe as well. We're looking forward to having you here with us. The floor is yours. Before passing the floor to Dr. Suzana, I'm sorry, guys. In our digital channels, we have the simultaneous translation of the event. You may choose what link do you want, the link for Portuguese or English. Here in Zoom, you can do the same by clicking on the icon of the globe written interpretation at the bottom of your screen, choosing the language in which you would like to hear the transmission. Thank you very much. Dr. Suzana, the floor is yours. Thank you, Alessandra. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Alessandra has already done part of my job here because she started introducing Dr. Ben Pazi, but I would like to expand a little bit about Professor Hanoch Ben Pazi's research at the University of Bar Ilan in Israel. I will start speaking in English now, because the interview will also be conducted in English.
You understood everything in Portuguese. We spoke up to this moment. We are so happy to have you with us, and it's a great opportunity to discuss deep things, okay? We are fed up with information, no comprehension, no complexity. This is we have this 1 hour and a half really to dive into something deep, and I thank you very much for being with us. I'll just complement some of the things that Alessandra already told us about you. Mainly about your research on Levinas's Jewish writings and phenomenological writings that have been shown to be a most relevant contribution to the philosophical study and understanding of Levinas at large. And another main field of your research, which is the Jewish hermeneutics in modern Jewish thought, that deals with the ethical meaning of interpretation and the moral responsibility placed upon the interpreter of a text, especially a text regarded as sacred by tradition. Professor Ben Pazi's book, Interpretation as an Ethical Act, is one of the fruits of this endeavor. In this context, he is a participant in the Scriptural Reasoning Forum at Cambridge University and in interreligious forums. Another important field of his research is testimony and responsibility, which contributes to the development of a philosophy of testimony that opens up into a number of philosophical and ethical deliberations on the meaning of tradition and religious tradition, the ethical responsibility placed upon the subject in the communication age, and the importance of testimony in shaping memory. As I read this, I can't help but thinking about the latest Alilat Dam on our people, the blood libel by that woman in Shifa Hospital. But, well, these last weeks I've been reading some very interesting and mind-catching articles of yours, so we could really be here talking indefinitely. But one article in particular caught my attention. It is the chapter that you wrote in the book, Levinas Faces, Biblical Figures. Nothing to do with my being a biblical scholar. Huh? And where you, in this article, you analyze Levinas' interpretation of the episode of the Exodus, where the Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, take with them out of Egypt the coffin of Joseph, and take it to the promised land, bring it to the promised land. You wrote, and I quote, "The voice of Joseph still echoes in our time, a voice that calls for fraternity with duty and forgiveness, hospitality with economic obligations." And these biblical principles seem to me as key words for the peace that we pray for with such fervor. I would like you please to explain this fundamental teaching to us. And since we are talking about coffins and the dead, could you please elaborate also on the importance of rescuing the bodies of our sisters and brothers in this war, even when it means sacrificing the lives of our so young boys, our precious soldiers? How this duty harmonize with the Jewish principle of pikuach nefesh, the sanctity of life above all commandments?
Wow. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to be part of that. Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Okay. So it is a great honor for me to be with you in Sao Paulo now. Even I'm still in Israel, and it's for me it's a commitment to be in Israel right now in these horrible times, and to be with my my kids, 2 of them in the service in the army, and with all the people that are here, the refugee, the horror, everything that is here is very, very hard and difficult times for us. So thank you for let me be with you by Zoom to feel free to talk with you from now. You opened the discussion with an amazing image that Levinas used from the Midrash, the rabbinical Midrash. In the image, you can see that there are two coffins, two aronot, that Bnei Israel, when they are in the desert from Egypt to the Promised Land, walking with two. One is the coffin. In Hebrew is more easy because it's aronot, and the Aron HaKodesh of the what he called the eternal, and the Aron of the coffin of Joseph. Bnei Israel walk in the desert. One is the symbol of life, one is the symbol of death. And when the people look at this, at Israel, and saw these two walking together, they ask themselves, what does that mean? And from Levinas's perspective, the most important issue is that when we are going to Israel, to the Promised Land, we are not forget the past. We are not forget what happened to us. We are not forget the reason how do we arrive to this point in our history. And for the Israel in the Exodus, in the second book of the Torah in Exodus, but remember the Genesis, remember the first book. And the first book is the story of Joseph. And what is amazing that this is the story of the Bible, that people of Israel, they are in the Galut, in the exile to Egypt because of Joseph, what's happened with Joseph. And when they back to Israel, the only son of Joseph that returned to Israel, is back in Israel, was Joseph. And for this reason, and it's very, very important for these days also, that even when our eyes is to the future, to the promise, to maybe to the promise of the peace, of the prophecy, of everything, we have to remember that our eyes have to be also to the back, to the history, and remember where we came from and where we're going to. And that is very important for our days. I may read in a few minutes one article, short article that I wrote in the beginning of this October. But but for Levinas is not enough. Talking about Joseph is not only talking about what his brother made for him, and what they do for him when he arrived. That is very important. But for Levinas, thinking about Joseph, thinking about values, about what is the significant values for our peoplehood, our Jewish identity. And then he used few values that, of course, I took from different places from his writings, but one of them, and it is, for me, it's amazing, is the meaning of hospitality. Hospitality for Levinas is not just a nice word when you think about yourself, open your home for the guests that come from around. No, it's different kind of meaning. For Levinas, hospitality is different kind of politics, in different kind of relation between people, between one and the other. And hospitality could open a new kind of political perspective. What is the meaning of country? What is the meaning of group? What is the meaning of identity that we have to host our guests? I want to be a little bit in the phenomenological point of view. Suzanne, you will allow me to do that. For Levinas, the way to deal with hospitality, what is the phenomenon of hospitality, is thought about the maternity. What is the meaning of being in pregnancy? The idea of pregnancy, a phenomenon, is to open yourself to the other and you feel comfortable with all the pains, with all the difference, with something that happened in yourself, but you know that this is the other, and you will be responsible for this child. For me, as a man, as a male identity, I may say this is phenomenology. I think about it as hospitality, to be open to the other in his otherness, to open yourself to the other. Sometimes very difficult, sometimes very hard, but we have to open ourselves. For Levinas, the idea of Joseph, when he opened Egypt to the strangers that came from all around the world to Egypt to find their places for the anger, for something that happened, it's to build a new kind of community with the idea, the value of hospitality. So when Bnei Israel, the people of Israel, came from Egypt to the Promised Land, it's not only that they came to find the territory, to find the homeland. No. The deep meaning is the values that you have to bring from the days of the exile to the days of politics, the days of Israel, in our day also. I thought about it when you asked me about Joseph and this particular article. I thought about it because in these days, it's horrible days in Israel. As you all know, it's not only for Israel, for the Jews all around the world, and I think for humankind, as humanity. We are dealing with a very complicated situation. From one aspect, we have to give a name to the evil, to deal with the bad, with the meaning of war, with all what happened to us, not to us just as an Israeli, not as only as a Jews, as a human being. And in the other end, we have to remember our commitment to the good. The commitment to the good, because there will be a days after that, after the war. And we have to be commitment to the good, because at the end of the war, we have to return to be a community with values, with the right values. And when Joseph met his brothers, he told them, you have to learn again the meaning of fraternity. What is the meaning of fraternity between people, between different people, between men and women, between the native and the stranger? We have to rebuild our values of fraternity, and that will be very hard, I'm sure about it. But from the philosophical point of view, this is our commitment to ourselves and to others. I can't hear you, Susan.
Sorry, thank you. But and about this duty, I understand that the word is duty towards the dead bodies and the pikuach nefesh. What do you think about it? Are we in a contradiction? Are we forced to be in this contradiction?
The situation is very complicated. We have to deal with the evil. We have to deal with what happened now, with the pikuach nefesh. And I think that we have to remember that our struggle against evil is not only for us, it's for all humanity. But in the same times, the commitment to the good is to do whatever we can to save the lives of the others. And it's very hard, it's very difficult, I don't want to replace myself in the right situation, but the pikuach nefesh now, for all the captures, all the people, the chatufim, the kids, the women, the soldiers, the old men, we have to deal with that. And we ask ourselves, how can we deal with that? In my dreams, in my nightmare, I think about the situation. I said, all over the world, you have to cry, you have to shout and say, what's going on? You can't understand that this situation is impossible. The meaning of life, this is the test for us about our human values, and we'll deal with that now. And in all this kind of situation, we'll deal, and my anxiety, that I'm almost sure that there will be a people that will never know what happened to them, that they are missed, not only for us, for the Palestinian also, or in Gaza. And my nightmare is that at the end of the war, we will understand that we'll never know what happened to them. And as a Jew, as an Israeli, as a human being, I ask myself all the time, for these people, for this family, tomorrow I'm supposed to be in the square of the families of these people, and they look about these mothers, these fathers. What can we tell them? And we have to be with them. There's not the right response to this situation, I know, but to be with them, to hug them, to let them know that we are with them, to feel their what happened to them, that is most important for me. I have a very good friend of mine. She is from Nahal Oz. Nahal Oz is a kibbutz very close to Gaza. They were in their house in the 7th of October, when the terrorists entered their home. They struggled about the door. At the end of the day, they succeed to went and to find a place. And I talk with her a lot, Dr. Nurit Hirschfeld. She's very involved in the interreligious dialogue. And she taught me that her commitment to humanism, to the Jewish humanism, even in these horrible days, is the most important for her to find her identity, to find her identity as a mother to her kids. And I deal with that and continue to think about it. And, as a philosopher, not a politician, I'm not in the army, I'm not fighting on the ground against Hamas, against the terrorists. But I do feel my commitment to these people, to our identity, to our values. So from this point of view, you're definitely right. The meaning of pikuach nefesh became very clear now in Israel. The duty, the chovah of pikuach nefesh is the essential part of our identity as a people, as a Jewish state. But the way that we have to deal with that is to remember that there will be a day after that. And we will have a lot of work to do after that. What we call, the state of Israel, it's like a house for the Jews all around the world. as a house for people to come, pilgrimage, to be as a Christian to arrive to Israel. One day, at the end of Sukkot, we found ourselves that we don't live in house, we live in sukkah. And this sukkah is open for all the wind. And this sukkah is open, and we have to keep it to rebuild this sukkah, this house again. So for me, when you talk about pikuach nefesh, I think about the people that in the tunnel, you know, in the Gaza. I think about the people of Gaza. I think about Israel. I think about all the Israeli that are around the world that feel again anti-Semitic. And I try to do our best for our kids, for the next generation.
You said you were going to read a short article. I read it in Hebrew that you published, and could you please proceed?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I will, is that okay? I will introduce few sentences before I read it. At the beginning of the war, immediately after the October 7th, I started to write an essays. In Hebrew, it's supposed to be for my student and then for a lot of people. And then I found that it's not all over the world, but a lot of people read it and it was very important for them. And few of these essays are also translated to English. And there is a date about each essay. Every week I read one essay, and the first one was in the 9th of October. That means 2 days after the 7th of October. And I call it, Given a Name to Evil, a Commitment to the Good. When I read it now, 5 or 6 months later, I can't imagine that this is things that I wrote in the beginning of the war. Please allow me to share with a few thoughts from these days of war. A time to be silent, a time to speak. We have to be silent in the face of unimaginable horror, real evil, and extreme violence. We have to be silent in the face of the feeling of the shame, guilt, and anxiety. We have to be silent to allow our excellent person, our security forces, our medical teams, our social service agencies to do the work as the best as they can. Up in the heart of the storm. In a unique article written by Emmanuel Levinas, titled Honneur sans drapeau, Honor Without a Flag, and published under the title Nameless, it reflects on the need to preserve the inner life in times of crisis. This is crucial to maintain the conscience during days when evil is not concealed and good is not really appeared. So I ask you to be in silence and read away describe the Jewish condition as a profoundly human situation in which in a single moment the entire world could be destroyed. Today, this is not the entire world, but this is a very hard time for us in Israel. And I skip and I just another, when you talk about the meaning of Judaism, the Jewish condition is constituted within humanity. Judaism is humanity on the brink of morality without institutions. I do not mean that the Jewish condition is also an insurance against that risk. The Jews are people like all other peoples. They too desire to know that the voice of their conscience is recorded in the civilization. They are an older, more skeptical people, more inquiring than the others, asking before the others. Whether that voice is not an echo of historical order that transcends us? A people in love with happiness, like all peoples, and the pleasure of life. But by a strange election, there are people, conditions, and situated among the nations in a such way that it is liable to find himself overnight and without warning in a wretchedness of their exile. Desert, ghetto, concentration camp. All of splendors of life swept away like tinsel, the temples in flames, the prophet without vision, reduced to an inner morality that is believed by the universe. A people exposed even the most peaceful of times to anti-Semitic remarks. They heard the anti-Semitic remark everywhere. And I quote again, but that condition in which human morality returns after so many centuries to its womb attests with the very Old Testament its origin on the higher side of the civilization. Civilization made possible, called for, brought about, hailed and blessed by that morality, which can, however, for its part, only know and justify itself in the fragility of the consciousness, in the 4 copies of the הלכה, 4 אמות של הלכה בלבד, that mean the inner life. And when I wrote it, I returned to these days, 2 days after the war began, after the horrible day of the 7th of October, when we don't know what's happened exactly. We know that that was horrible. We know the numbers. We know what's happened in the forest. We know what happened in the kibbutzim. We know what happened in Sderot, in Netivot, in Ofakim. We know all of that. I remember people that I called them. They're still in the mamad, in the secure room in their house, and they told me, "We are secure. We are closed. We can't go out. We're blocked here in our place. We're trying to keep our kids." And that was horrible days, unimaginable error. And then we try to think, what is the meaning of all that? I want to share with you, I hope that is okay. During Sukkot, there was an event in Kibbutz Alumim. Kibbutz Alumim was part of the attack of the Hamas terror. There was an event for my book, for my new book. I have a new book. The name is Hebrew Humanism, and I have an event in Kibbutz Alumim in the second day of Chol HaMoed of Sukkot. All the people that were in this event were from the Otef, from Nachal Oz, from Saad, from Nir Oz, from Magen, from Sderot. When 7th of October happened, I knew that few of them were killed, were murdered. One of them is in Gaza now. I don't know, they are just from the public. Three days after that was the 7th of October. So for me, thinking about the meaning of humanism, of Hebrew humanism, our commitment to the ethical point of view of Judaism in these horrible days was very, very hard. And in Israel, we like to say that Shiv'a be'October, the 7th day of October, is also Shiv'a, It's like morning of Shiva. And so I said, I have to be in silence for these horrible days to think, but remember my commitment to my students, to my family, to my nation, to rebuild our humanity.
Thank you for sharing this with us. Thank you. Professor Pondé,
I'm here.
Is also a special guest of us. It's always a pleasure, great pleasure, to be in the same forum as you. And I ask you to please ask your questions to Professor Hanoch.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Suzana, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Professor. I would switch from Levinas to Rosenzweig. Okay.
Right.
And yeah. And I have a couple of questions. The first one, it is part of the Star of Redemption, his major work, right? And I've always been, I like very much the image which he, let's say, ends his book, or he closes his reflection. He says that we are walking, like we are between, in our lives, we are between miracle and mystery. And for him, this is typically Jewish, to be aware of this situation, okay? We know that Rosenzweig had, let's say, a very critical eye for metaphysics, okay? And so what do you think about these two categories, like these two concepts? What is to walk between mystery and miracle? I mean, I imagine, I have taught that to my students many times, and I would like to know what you do to teach this kind of idea that we are people who walk between miracle and mystery, like some sort of ontology, okay? Typically Hebrew. This would be the first question. Then we move to the second, if you please. Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much for being here, and it's an honor for me that you are with me and we can talk together. That is, thank you very much for that. I want to open my answer, my response, with the first sentence of the book that is relevant for our days, of course. All knowing of all begins in death, the fear of death. I'm not sure about if it's, you know, there is a legend about when exactly he wrote this amazing sentence. Maybe it's the First World War, or maybe not. It's not important for me now to deal with that. But the idea that we have to build the meaning of life from the fear of meaningless of life, this is very important for Rosenzweig and for us also. I think that we're in search of meaning, especially when time of error, time of war, time of anxiety. So we have to deal with the searching of meaning. I do love to teach this chapter about the miracle of Rosenzweig. And I will tell you why. When Rosenzweig dealt with the question of miracle, he said, you know, in the history, in the medieval, there was very popular to talk about miracles. Everyone saw everywhere miracles. Everything was miracle. Today, in the rational life, in the modern times, this is not so popular to talk about miracles. But let's understand what is the meaning of miracle. And he said, the miracle is not that you say that you did something, because there are a lot of different things happen in the world. It's okay. But the meaning of miracle is what you talk about. What is the meaning that you give to the events of your life? And for that reason, he said, he talked about the story about the Mount Sinai, about Ma'amad Har Sinai, about the Kabbalat Torah, and he said, maybe yes, maybe not. You may say, like the Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, that this is for sure we can test because a lot of people saw it and testimony and etc. And then he said, no, the most important is not what's happened in the past. The most important is the meaning that you gave to the events in your time and the testimony that you gave in your life, in your real life. So for him, and maybe for us, is not only to talk about what happened to us, but the meaning that we establish to the events that happen to us for the future. So for me, when I like to read it, I love to read it with students, but it's kind of changing mind. What is the meaning of miracle? We're not talking about miracle like all other religious believers that say, oh, I saw a miracle, I saw water, I saw that. No, this is not important. What is the meaning that you give to this miracle, to this event? That is the most important. And for me, when he talk about mystery, what's happened is the ability to pray. The ability to pray for a better future. The ability to be against God and to say to God, what's happened in the world, what's happened in the history is not enough for us. We want better world. We ask you, we request, we demand that the world will be better. So the mystery is not only what's happened behind whatever you can say. It's not a metaphysic. He don't want with that. He want to change our mind, our way of being, our life. And this is the reason that the end of the book is the gate. And the gate is open to the life. Because at the end of the day, at the end of the journey that he took us, from the beginning to the end of the book, is how to rebuild our language, to remake, to give meaning to names, to give meaning to words. And I saw it in few of Rosenzweig, when Rosenzweig said, when God called man, Adam, and he said, Adam is the human being, Adam is his name. And something very strange in name of man. The most important part of my identity is my name. But I didn't choose it. Someone from outside chose a name for me. And I have to grow up to this name. In the Kabbalistic point of view, Rabbi Chaim Vital said, every parent has a prophecy when they gave a name. So I don't know about Rabbi Chaim Vital, about the Kabbalistic point of view, but I think that the most crucial point here for Rosenzweig is that your identity is not from yourself, but from the outside. When someone calls your name, give your name, it changed something in yourself, that you understand that there is someone beyond you. And this is the reason that we are not only deal with the miracle to give a name, but this is kind of miracle. Language is a miracle. The language of human being is a miracle. And divine language also. But so when I hear the voice from outside, when I call you, when I call Susan, when I call my son Hillel, I give a name. And I want him to know that there is someone that think about him from the outside. The reason to have a name, the meaning of that we have a name, if we understand it deeply, it changes our society, our common life. Even in these days, part of the story in Israel now, 6 o'clock in the morning, is the horror of the hours. We call it utru lepirsum. Almost every morning, at 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:01, you can open the radio or the television or the computer, whatever you want, and you will hear the names of the soldier that killed yesterday. And every day, and the names that came to us very deep, people who don't know them before, but their names are with us. So when you talk about miracle and about the mystery, I think about the meaning that we gave to the events that we have in our life. And this is a choice. We have to choose in the right meaning, in the positive meaning, in the life. So thank you for your question about the miracle, because it is very important for me. This is not only the question of events. It's not a question of history. It's the question of the way that we have to deal with problems, with issues, and with events. And this is the reason that I said to myself, what will be the values that we will learn from these events that we have now?
Thank you, Professor. I have another question. I would say a little question, because it comes from a little book, right? That written by Rosenzweig. And we know when people who has read Rosenzweig, that in this book, this little book, there is this philosopher, his wife tells him to go buy butter. So he goes out and walks up to a bakery, okay? And there he sees a piece of butter inside the bakery, in the window. And when he's going inside to buy the butter, he's taken by a very deep question. Is this butter the same butter my wife had in mind when she asked me to buy butter? Do they have the same substance? Do they participate in the pure substance of butter? Okay. And then he goes completely sick. He's paralyzed. And then the book will describe his treatment. And at the end of his treatment, he sees that someone is coming towards him, and he has a dream, right? It sounds like psychoanalysis. He has a dream. And in this dream, there is this person coming towards him. And this person, this figure, asks him, "Can't you recognize me? I'm your brother. I'm death." Okay? So in this little book, Rosenzweig is clearly criticizing Platonic metaphysics, the idea that there is a perfect butter somewhere and that we participate in this butter. So what I would like to ask you is, do you think that we are still looking for the perfect butter nowadays?
Thank you so much for your question and for your suggestion of butter. I have to tell you, I'm vegan. Butter is
Oh,
not
you're
very important
vegan.
for me.
So we have to change the book.
Yeah, I have to change the book. Yeah, okay. No, but I'm sure that there will be a new vegan butter. Don't worry.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure. You know, in the beginning of the book, there is an introduction that was made. Found of one for the philosophers and one for the normal people. And he said to the philosopher, "Please stay out. Don't come here. I know your critiques. I know how you can read books." And then the other book he said, "You didn't listen to me. I told you not to come here to this book. It's not for you." and it is very important for me to think about not only about Rosenzweig, about the meaning of philosophy. Because when we think about philosophy, about thinking, about the thinker, we have to know that we have to deal with reality, with the real life. We're not going to build a castle in the sky. Castle in heaven is wonderful. What Chazal call it Migdal Bashamayim. The castle, it's wonderful to build. But the task of the philosopher is to deal with the real problems, real human beings with real problems. So when you ask me about are we still looking for the perfect butter, and of course for Rosenzweig this is a very bad idea. Very bad idea. It's not in a good position, got good attitude. We have to find another way to deal with problems, with issue, with thinking, with thought. But because I have to answer, not Rosenzweig. Rosenzweig is not here. When I teach, he answer, but not here. I want to deal with another castle of Babel, of Genesis. When we read this story, famous story about Migdal Babel, the Tower of Babel, and we ask ourselves what's happened there, and we may say that this is an imaginary tower. It's not only stupidity, it's not important if they arrive to the sky or not, after heaven or not, but it's kind of idea how to deal with that. And we're looking about this tower, Babel, this imaginary world that all human beings together as united in one place and find a way together in this wonderful, but it's not reality. The reality that we have to deal with diversity, with differences, with people, different languages, different human beings, male, women, others together in the same place. And when we arrive to Genesis 12, to this Tower of Babel, one of the people that were there was Abraham. You don't know, but I will tell you. He was there. He was looking off the Tower of Babel and asked himself, what can I learn from this tower? what can I learn from this Torah? I have to go to a new places, and I have to be a prophet. I have to give them the respect, the honor to be themselves. I have to give my my ideas for all humanity, and to rebuild humanity from families, from nation, from different nation together. So when I read it and I return to your perfect batter, I answer Plato and maybe Rosenzweig also. When we think about this, you know, the world of ideas, the kingdom of ideas, and I think about the reality, and I said, what can I do with that? This imaginary legend about the perfect kingdom, nothing I have to do with that. But maybe I can look about this and about this kind of Plato dialogue and go back to myself and ask myself, okay, this is not my word, but what can I learn from that? I can be there, listen to that, and thinking again about the meaning of that. And for me, when we talk about once I spoke about the sick and the health mind, I think that in you that is very important to deal with this perfect word, this imaginary word, with this fantasy. But the meaning of that has to be rebuilt in the real life. And the real life sometimes is very hard, very difficult, but we have to face the problem and to deal with them. So if you ask me about the perfect batter, yes, of course, we're looking for the perfect batter, but this is not enough for us. This is not enough for us because we have to deal with the real life. This is not a perfect, this is not imaginary. We have to continue with that. And this is the way we have to deal with problems also.
Maybe we should do the best butter we can, right? We can't have perfect butter, but we should. It sounds really a crazy conversation for philosophers to discuss the kind of butter we will make. Well, we go on. Now it's you, Suzana, what we do.
And before Suzana, I want to continue one issue. There is a wonderful story of Kierkegaard about someone that came to a store and he saw that there in the store there is a lot of promises, happiness, wealthy, spirituality, everything. And he came to the storeman and asked him, I want to buy a drug for happiness. And they said, I'm sorry, we're not so happiness, we're not so wealthy, just the stamps, just the titles. This is the way we deal with that. So this is the problem of philosopher. Sometimes they deal with the titles. Titles, and everywhere, the stamps. So no. We have to deal with the meaning of the words. The meaning of the words, and to rebuild the meaning of the words is the most important task of the philosopher. And for the community, as a community, we have to deal with this idea. You know, in Hebrew, there is a very strange tradition. I'm sorry for the people that's not familiar with all the philosophy of language, but I want to say something very simple. Don't worry. Usually, when you talk about the philosophy of language, we think about the meaning of words. Is that common meaning that we are together agree about the meaning, or there is something very unique in these words? The religious tradition, of course, always said that the language is from God. Somewhere there is a God. The Jewish tradition has specific contribution to this discussion. We're not deal with the words, but with letters. Aleph, Bet, Gimel. We're thinking about the meaning of letters before we are going to think about the meaning of words. And when you think about this strange tradition, you know, and there is a tradition of a mystical tradition and philosophical tradition, and a lot of people and say, what is that meaning of that? Are you sure that the letters were before the words? I know that this is Rabbi Akiva said, and this Rabbi Ishmael said, it's okay for me, but what is the meaning of that in the philosophical perspective? And I want to say one issue about this kind of thinking. When we are in time of troubles, of sorrow, of wars, difficult times, we are trying to go back to the most simple aspect of our life, to the beginning of the meaning, to rebuild, to reestablish the language. We have to do a very sensitive, a very nuanced about the meaning of words together. And I may say, you know, in Israel, the last year before the war was very hard also. Between people, we felt that we are go to the end of the state, the end of the community, because what's happened between us. And I think this tradition gave us the meaning to deal again with the language, how we talk to someone else, to different people, to different group in the state, to change the way that we are use the words, to respect the other, to respect the teachers, to respect the others, the religious, the secular, the political, different political position. And this kind of tradition is very demanding from ourselves to change the way that we think together in the community. You know, in these days, it's so simple to use an inappropriate words, inappropriate language. Just on the computer, you can see that I make it like this. To be in the Facebook, to write something, to write against someone, to be very inappropriate word. And I said, maybe this time, this difficult time, we can learn from the Jewish tradition to go back to the atomic aspect of the language, the letters, to learn from the Aleph, to learn from the Bet, to learn from the Gimel, from the Dalet, and so on, to understand the meaning, to re-understand the meaning of the words, that we can make a new kind of dialogue between people. So it's not only the question of the words, but the way that we use words is very, very important. Susan, you are mute. There is the most fascinating word, sentence in Zoom. Unmute yourself.
This is a lesson I haven't learned yet, okay? I'm going to invite you really to teach us how to understand the letters. I just want to close this wonderful talk with with another biblical questions. I have to ask your pardon for going back to the Bible all the time, where I think, sorry, Pondé, it's the source of all thinking. In Hebrew language and thought, in biblical thought, we don't face the future. We look back at the future. I think this is a so important thing to learn for our times, for our anxiety towards the future, for all humanity, as you say. Please.
Thank you so much. It's okay. I love the Bible, but I will tell you, we are a very in this kind of a conversation. I may say that I used to say to my students, I can say whatever I want about the Bible. I'm not a biblical scholar. I use the biblical verses to say philosophy, so I can say whatever I want. I think I will immediately arrive to the question of the grammar that you present here about the vav hipuch, the vav that make from the future to the past, from the past to the future. We already just in Sunday we read from Esther, Vayi bimei Achashverosh. What is the meaning of Vayihi? It's the past or the future, etc. I think part of this idea came from the name of God. The name of God in the Bible, especially when we think about Moses, when he asked God in the sneh, in the fire of the sneh, said, when they will ask me, what's your name? The reader said, which sound, which voice Moses heard? The Midrash answered, the voice of his father. It's amazing idea. Before Freud, before the psychoanalytical point of view, they said he heard the voice of God exact as a voice of his father. And the Midrash, for you that you can read in the Vayikra, the Midrash, we said in Israel in the Piyutim of Yanai, that when Vayikra el Moshe, Yanai said, the same voice that he heard in the sneh was the voice here, the same voice. But then he asked, what is your name? And the answer was, Ehyeh asher ehyeh. And you know, all the translation deal with that and said, I am who I am. But this is not a good translation. The right translation is Ehyeh, I will be, whatever I will be. And the reason of that we are going back to the sneh, to Egypt, to Exodus, and we hear the voice of God from the verses, and God told us, will tell us, I am with you wherever you are going to. From the past, we still heard the echo of the voice of God that call us, Ehyeh asher ehyeh. I will be with you, and I will stay with you. You know, and then the book said that Moses asked, "What can I say? It's not a good idea to tell them I will stay with you. No, okay. Tell them one, I will be with you." So when you talk about the meaning of future, not from the day will come that they where we came from, I will say, I will tell myself, this is a wonderful tradition, wonderful heritage to learn from. That you are not only forget the past, forget the history, but the meaning of the history is the way that you will deal with the future. For Levinas, the future is avenir. What will come from the future? We are open to the future, to new kind. And I want to go back to these days in Israel. In the 7th of October, it was a horrible day. But in the same day, we found ourselves with a wonderful generation. The new generation in Israel, the young people of Israel, they're amazing young people. We're shocked. We look for them and say, you will be our teacher. Their obligation, their commitment, their ethical commitment to the people, to the families. They heard the voice, left their home, and went to the south to help people, to do something. They will be the teacher. And it's very normal to say that the young are the future. הצעירים הם העתיד. But in this horrible day, we thought that they will give us the meaning. What is the reason that we are here? What is the meaning of identity, of the values that we have to do with that? So when I say we're searching for meaning, we're talking about fraternity, we're talking about different kind of values in these days. And I said, and we have a wonderful teacher. And our teacher is the young people of Israel. And maybe this is the reason that they always, not always, a lot of time in the Bible you can find Bnei Israel. And I say Bnei Uvnot Israel. Bnei Israel because the people that bring the future are the people that can see themselves as a students, as a young people, as people with commitment to the future. So the way that you deal with the grammar is wonderful. And this is a wonderful image for me to deal with what we can learn from the Bible. And I will say we're in the journey toward the future. And the ritual of the reading of the Bible is the ritual of journey from the past to the future and learn from the past the real meaning of values that we can bring together to the end of the life.
Thank you so much for that.
Can I read for the end of the meetings? I want to read. Is that okay for you? Thank you. I want to say there are few important lessons that we learn from these difficult days, the ideas that we met in Israel. One of them is to deal with the meaning of evil, different kind of evil. And in this meaning, I think that we found ourselves in the struggle for all humanity to deal with the meaning of evil. It's not easy at all. The other lesson is the values. What is the meaning of fraternity? What is the meaning of dialogue? What is the searching of meaning? And I want to read for you two small issues, paragraph. There is no other field of human being where the great ideas of justice, truth, and morality lead to such great failures as the field of politics. And yet, the future of humanity depends on the policy and politics. More precisely, they depend on the question of whether the moral goals can be fulfilled in a political sphere and to what extent they will be fulfilled. The war managed to tear off the masks, to shake off the dust that covered the statement of opening objectives. The real base of the political reality is left exposed and without any cover. We have to deal again with the meaning of justice in politics, the meaning of peace in politics, the real meaning of politics, that we have to deal with values. And the last paragraph, we have to be a messenger of life. A life of commitment, a life of meaning, a commitment to dialogue and affiliation, the restoration of fraternity, the acceptance of responsibility, all of them join to the important statement about the role of the intellectuals in declaring loyalty to the values of life. In our duty to remind the human that is still a human being, and to state the obvious, that there are eternal values, which are the ones that make life more precious. For them, we should fight and ensure that the flags of justice and the good will return to the top of the mast. Inside me, Yael Shevach's words, inside me there is something very strong that I believe in. I would like to imagine that everyone will see himself next year in Simchat Torah, reflecting himself in these dark days and saying to oneself, this is true. It was shocking, painful, nightmare, sad, but I know that I was in this situation the best I could be. I did what I could. I acted as much as I could, and today I'm better, greater person, much better messenger of life. I would like to believe that from these terrible days, we will get out like Rosenzweig in the star, like Moses and Joseph in the Bible, that we will be a messenger of life for all humanity.
You're making my job very difficult because I'm very touched. But I want to thank you so much. I want to thank you so much. We not only learned, but I think we heard wonderful words that make us strong and strengthens our belief and our love for Israel and for our people. And surely, let's look back at the future and for good days. In the name of the Center for Jewish Studies at the University of São Paulo and the Academia Judaica and Bogrei Chazit, in the name of Professor Pondé and I wish to thank you so much. Laila Tov, obrigada a todos vocês pela participação.
Thank you, everyone else, for the participation. Thank you for your audience. And see you guys next time.
Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you so much for all the audience. Victor, also, thank you very much for being here. And Ricardo, thank you so much for all of you. It was a great honor for me to be with you. And I hope that we all will be a messenger of life.
Yeah. Yes.